Last night, 33-year-old Muslim candidate Zohran Mamdani defied all odds in the New York Democratic primary, defeating former Governor Andrew Cuomo. Mamdani ran one of the most unapologetically pro-Palestine and socialist campaigns in New York electoral politics history, which marked a significant moment in progressive organizing here in the city. Although his campaign focused on bread and butter issues such as public transportation or housing, a lot of the conversation that revolved around Mamdani was on his critique of Israel, which his opposition used to demonize him in an attempt to portray him as anti-Semitic. We're asking the city what Mamdani's win last night might mean for New York, which has never seen a young South Asian Muslim mayor, and whether they think he'll win in the mayoral election in November. Okay, so we're sitting here actually under a Zohran poster here in Prospect Heights. Did you vote for Zohran?
Yes, ranked number 1. Did not rank Cuomo.
Okay. And what was your reaction last night? Did you expect him to win?
I was incredibly hopeful just because I feel like a lot of my friends felt very galvanized to vote. Like a lot of my friends that were transplants that just moved to the city, registered to vote. So I was really, really excited. My roommate and I, we were watching Love Island and we just kept refreshing the polls like every 5 minutes. So yeah, we were just super hyped and elated to hear the results.
So did you know about Zohran? His campaign was like a year long. He really, really worked hard. At what point did you know of him, and what moment did you think, okay, wait, this is somebody that I would go out of my way to go and vote for?
Yeah, I just moved from Harlem, and about a few months ago, a lot of people were canvassing for Zohran, and so I got to meet a lot of young folks talking about his platforms and what he was advocating for, and I just thought it was something that I wanted to, be a part of and learn more about, and it was things that I feel like would really impact the city, and not just the city at large, but like the working class people that have lived here for decades. Yeah. So that was something that was really important to me to contribute as someone who just moved here, to really help support what the city has been before I got here. So.
Okay. And what do you think? I think I'm also a transplant, so I hear a lot about what the city used to be. Mm-hmm. What are some of the issues that you hear from people and some of the day-to-day things that you think Zohran really honed in on in your communities?
Yeah, I think his plans for freezing rent. I know for a lot of people that have lived here for decades, they have been dealing with a lot of rent increases, not being able to afford the places that they've grown up and lived in for their whole lives. And so being able to support communities and people that have built this city and, support a candidate that wants to support them as well was something that was really important to me.
He's also very Muslim, and he talks about it, and it's a part of his campaign. What does that mean for you? You're visibly Muslim, and you walk around the city visibly Muslim. Mm-hmm. What does that mean for you to have, the person that may potentially be the mayor of New York, have the same identity as you?
I think it's always important to have anyone running in any part of office be able to represent the identities of people that actually live in the city. Yeah. Having a Muslim mayor is just going to make something that I'm really proud of, me being Muslim, just even more, make me feel more safe, make me feel more brave. So yeah, I was super excited to support him.
He also got a lot of backlash, as we saw, because he would talk about Palestine and he would critique Israel, on the main stage. Mm-hmm. How do you think that played out? Do you think that helped him? Do you think that actually set him back? What did you think whenever you saw all of the conversation kind of hone in on that stance that he has, as opposed to his stances on the rest of city policies?
Yeah, I think that especially for Gen Z kids of color, Muslim kids, I think the Democratic establishment has this idea that being moderate and being centrist in a lot of their views is what's going to galvanize the Democratic Party, and trying to see if we can meet in the middle and get this huge grasp on all of America. But to have somebody so clear on his values and where he stands, especially with Palestine, I think galvanized a lot of Gen Z. So yeah, especially hearing someone say the word Palestine in their election campaign was really revolutionary, which is nuts, but it was. So I think that galvanized a lot of Gen Z voters.
Yeah. Are you first gen?
Yes.
And you're from?
Somalia.
Okay. Do you feel was this a part of any of the conversations that your family and your friends were having back home? Not in Somalia, mm-hmm. in Washington. You said you're from Seattle. Yeah. Was this something that you felt like your friends around the States were talking about as well? And why do you think, if they were, why do you think that it was relevant to them?
Yeah, I think especially with the recent presidential election, I think everyone all over America, especially Gen Z folks, have question a lot of the Democratic Party and the Democratic establishment and wanting them to take more stronger stances on a lot of their platforms. And so to see it happen in New York City and successfully happen in New York City, I think just became the hot topic conversation, not just in New York, but like all over the country.
And last question, what do you think this might mean for Gen Z and their relationship with electoral politics? Do you think that it might change what they think? It went under, it was under a lot of criticism during the presidential election, with a lot of Gen Z not relating to either Trump or Kamala. Do you think this might change things in like the grand scheme?
I hope it does. I hope that folks continue to root and push for candidates that feel represent their ideals and their beliefs. And I hope so more so that having somebody that's progressive and believes in our values, that we also continue to be advocates for those platforms, that we continue to hold politicians accountable. Zoran winning the primary and Sharla winning mayor, we still have to have that accountability relationship with our politicians. So the thing I hope to change is that people continue to still be just as active and just as present in this campaign, not just ending here in the primary, but in the mayoral election and then beyond.
I was a little surprised. I honestly didn't think he was going to win. I was hopeful he would. But after I met him in the park last week, I felt like it was destiny. No, it was more of just like, I think he genuinely ran a campaign. I think Cuomo even admitted it. Like, he ran a very strong campaign where he was able to get amongst the people, especially the youth, get them out to vote. So super excited for what that means for the city and like where we're going next. I think it was also like, it's a left-leaning city, but I think we're even going farther to the left and like reaching more into the socialism aspect, which I think was a big part of his campaign. So I think it's exciting. Also, a Muslim brown man as a mayor of New York City is indicative of like maybe a changing of the tides of the broader political climate in the U.S. as well. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of stuff happening in the Middle East right now. There's Palestine, but there's also even like the Iran war and whatnot. So I think a lot of that is bringing highlight onto him. And I think even when you're watching some of the debates and whatnot, there's like almost unnecessary levels of emphasis on these things when you think about just like what it means to be the mayor of New York City. And I think also there was a little bit of maybe backlash to like how much there was inquisiting him about Israel and whatnot. And so maybe that was another spark of like why people really felt the need to get out and vote and make their voice heard on not only New York, but some of these broader things occurring in the world more broadly. Yeah, I think definitely being kind of like a young millennial, older Gen Z, like he was the candidate I had heard almost ubiquitously. There was maybe a little bit of Brad Lander. I think he also does a lot more on like the left socialistic side, but there was definitely no Cuomo, that's for sure. There's also just maybe a general movement, and this has happened in recent elections when you think about the presidential elections, like maybe it's time for some newer blood in the political scenes. Obviously Trump and Biden, like very old candidates. And so I think maybe that's also a trickle-down effect on the Cuomo. Obviously he had the stuff from his previous like stint in politics, but I think there's also maybe just a general movement of like, hey, how can we get some new blood, some new ideas, and some shake-up into things that like we haven't necessarily enjoyed and like might need some change. And so I think the age factor is definitely an important piece of that as well. I think in terms of the current climate, like Zoran got a lot of backlash because of the anti-Semitic wave, whereas anytime you, I don't know, are Muslim or outwardly pro-Palestine, like that is inherently then being transmitted as like you're anti-Semitic. So I think a lot of the backlash that at least I personally saw was like how his treatment of Israel or lack thereof was then seen as like anti-Semitic and backlash for maybe the Jewish community. Although I think he did a great job of like managing that, having a dual campaign with Brad. And so I think like maybe that's a big reason to why he was successful, of like being able to see that coming on the forefront, but then manage the campaign, set up that partnership. And I think that went a long way of like maybe calming any fears that the Jewish community might have had of that he is anti-Semitic, although I don't think that's true or has credence. Yeah, I mean, I think the younger people, younger generation are ecstatic. I think it's kind of like the first breakthrough in a bigger election where we see a younger candidate being able to be successful. I mean, just again, broadly speaking about like Trump, Biden, like all of the previous big presidential elections, you haven't been able to see even younger candidates, like a Vivek, if we're talking about like the other side, like although he's relatively successful, you just see these younger candidates flame out. So I think it's, hey, maybe this is a new era in politics, and the younger candidates' newer ideas may have some credence to play moving forward based on this election.
I was really proud of my city for pulling through. I think it was about time for a turnaround and for us to vote for someone who actually cares about representing the city and the people. And I think he really proved his point well during those interviews when people were constantly asking him about his support for Israel and how he was, you know, he didn't really respond to it because he knew that they were going to try and trap him. So him responding and being like, I'm here to represent New York, like I will happily talk with the Jewish community in New York, like that's where I belong, you know, that's what my position is. And I think that that alone, like, I really wanted to stand with him after that. I was like, yeah, that's the whole position, that's the whole point, you're being the mayor of New York, you know. I think we're finally realizing that the government is supposed to represent us, the people, and that we actually do have the power to speak up and change things. We just have to utilize the community and come together. And I think that this mayoral race really kind of showed how that can really turn things around. And I think that after this, I hope that New York will come together more and really start to utilize our power as the people to fix what we want fixed. Honestly, I didn't really know who he was. I wasn't really paying attention to the mayoral race until recently, about like 2 months ago. But my friends and I do try to keep up with local politics, and we try to talk about as much as we can because it's just important. A lot of the points that he covered were definitely points that my friends and I talk about a lot, especially like rent and just overall being able to afford to live here. Like her and I we grew up here, and like it's hard, you know, and I can't even imagine what it's like for other people who grew up here and just like are barely hanging on, you know, like it's really, it's not even New York anymore, it feels like. And I feel like especially the younger New Yorkers are kind of really wanting to bring that back, like, you know, the New York we grew up with and what we remember. I grew up in Fort Greene.
Lower East. So, what about your parents? Are they talking about this? Or do they have differing views on who should run?
My parents are very active, I would say. I mean, they're very left, very progressive people. So I think, like, in New York, it's hard to speak on older generations. I think, you know, New York is a very unique place in that it's somewhat, like, insular in politics. Obviously, there's some division, but I think, like, majority, at least in the areas where we frequent and we have, you know, presence in social circles, I think, like, it's somewhat homogenous, so.
What do you guys think's going to happen in November?
Everyone hates Adam, so I don't think,
Yeah.
I think this is a big step. I wasn't surprised, personally.
I always knew he was a bad mayor just from like that campaign I really paid attention to because I was like, there's something weird about this guy. So November, that was really satisfying for me. Yeah, it was nice.
Okay, so did you vote for Zora?
I did. Early voting. Yeah.
What was your reaction last night when you saw that?
I was pleasantly surprised. I think like the past month or two, he's gained a lot of traction, which has been really exciting to see. But I don't know, I feel like there is like a lot of concern that Cuomo just had a majority of the votes for a long time. So I was scared and, and anxious about it, but I was very excited to see it, especially like him being in the lead like right from the get-go when they started counting the votes. So yeah, I was very excited.
Why do you think he gained traction in the last couple of months, especially?
I think he just kind of knew how to appeal to the demographic that would vote for him. Definitely like in the past 3 months, I've kind of seen through social media and just like his outreach in the 5 boroughs, how much he's been doing to appeal to like the working class citizens of New York and like native New Yorkers who care about the heart of New York. And I think he's just a really good guy. Like he's a pleasant person to be around, I think, and a lot of people who have met him have been able to say that about him. So yeah. Well, one thing I do think is really prevalent right now, especially like seeing some of the conversation happening on social media, is like the racism against him as he won and like right before the election, the early voting started. There was just like a lot of racist rhetoric around him, and I think him winning speaks a lot to what New Yorkers believe in. They believe in diversity, and I stand with that, obviously, as a South Asian woman myself. So I think as somebody who sees myself in him, I think it's really exciting to see that New York also embraces that kind of culture and that heritage. I did think it was really interesting, like the debate being, that even a question of it being like, where's the place out of the state that you, or out of the country that you'd first visit, and everybody's saying Israel, and then him getting like a lot of pushback for saying he's going to stay in New York. I think it shouldn't be a hot take, but I feel like his response to the Israel and Palestine conflict and like how he feels about it is very reasonable. He he believes in like that Israel has a right to be a state but not an ethno-state. He doesn't really believe like any state or any country should have a hierarchy based on religion or ethnicity or race or anything like that. And I think that's a very valid take to have. And I kind of wish that like more politicians in this day and age would be more vocal about that. I also think he was very clear about the fact that he wants to meet Jewish New Yorkers where they're at right now, and so I think he had an opinion of like love and peace that I agree with. Well, I think with the last presidential election, a lot of people who are probably in the demographic that voted for Mamdani probably were a little disheartened. So seeing him win, I think can create a lot more momentum, especially for the 2026 election. So I'm hoping that like this is a push forward for future elections, and it doesn't lead to some regression like elections have in the past, where it just flip-flops back and forth. But yeah, I think the implication of this is it has potential to be really large. So I'm excited to see like what that looks like in the future, and I think this win is not just like for New York. I do think it has implications like across the country.
So Zoran focused a lot on housing and public transportation. Were any of the issues that he was talking about?
One of the problems I didn't like at all when he said he's going to do the minimum wage at $30.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know if he's trying to get more votes and by saying that, but it's not going to happen. Like, I have a small business, a deli. I can't bet these guys $30. If I bet $30 an hour, and instead of, let's say, bacon, egg, and cheese, $6, it will be $10. So it won't make sense. So you raise the minimum wage to $30, but also food and expenses is going to go up.
Okay.
Because if I bet $30, I'm going to raise everything else, not only just the food, drinks, everything. Everything is going to go up to the city. I think $30, I don't know, 20, yeah, what is it now, 16?
I think so.
Yeah, $20 is okay. But $30, I don't know. I mean, I don't know who gave him that idea. I think he probably just trying to get more votes, but I think it won't happen.
So that's, yeah, my last question is, do you think he'll deliver all of the promises that he has?
No,
For
no.
example, he said that if Netanyahu came to the city, he would arrest
No,
him.
he won't do it.
You don't think he
won't.
would?
No, no.
Why?
I mean, because, well, I think they all run to be elected, but they're not 100%. Like, everybody gets surprised. Like, at first, before I run the Delhi, I was like, oh, it's okay. You're just going to stay there. You're going to take care of it. But when you go inside and you're handling everything, you'll be surprised with a lot of facts.
Yeah.
I think same thing for him. He never done it before, so he will be surprised. There is more power. I mean, people has more power than him.
Yeah.
Yep.